Is the U.S. government trying to silence its critics by weaponizing federal inquiries? That's the explosive claim being made after a major political influencer found himself under the microscope for a recent trip to Cuba. Before we dive deeper, if you want to stay on top of everything happening in U.S. politics, hit that subscribe button right now and leave a like. It really helps this channel grow. Now, let's talk about Hasan Piker, the Marxist political influencer with millions of followers, who is currently lashing out over a federal investigation into his trip to communist Cuba. Piker, and a chorus of like-minded activists from groups like the Democratic Socialists of America and prominent anti-Israel networks, are framing this federal inquiry not as a standard investigation into potential sanctions violations, but as a clear act of political repression. They argue it's a tactic to intimidate broader anti-capitalist, anti-Western, and anti-Israel movements that have gained significant traction online. The controversy kicked off when Fox News Digital reported that the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, sent administrative subpoenas to Piker and Code Pink co-founder Medea Benjamin. These subpoenas demand documents detailing the financial, logistical, and communication aspects of their March trips to Cuba, raising questions about potential violations of laws and regulations governing dealings with the Cuban government. During a live stream on Twitch, Piker didn't mince words, calling the newsbulls and expressing his frustration. He told his followers, "They're after your boy. They're up my A. He acknowledged receiving the queries and stated that he believed his trip was cleared by OFAC, insisting, "Everything we did was cleared by Treasury." However, OFAC itself has not responded to requests for comment. What's particularly interesting here is how Piker, and the networks supporting him, are pivoting the narrative. He quickly shifted the focus from the Cuba sanctions inquiry to what he sees as the real motivation: backlash against his vocal criticism of Israel. A lot of this, by the way, does still have a lot to do with Israel, he charged. He believes his critics don't like that I talk about Israel and don't like that I am a loudmouth, a rabble-rouser. Piker asserted that the investigation isn't just about Cuba but also about his role in supporting anti-Israel voters and candidates who are increasingly winning their races, reflecting a growing sentiment among young people. This response mirrors a pattern we've seen increasingly from online activist influencers facing scrutiny. They tend to reframe legal or regulatory inquiries as political persecution, weaving them into a larger ideological struggle. Instead of addressing the specifics of the Treasury's inquiry, Piker is positioning himself as a victim of a coordinated campaign by Israel-first Democrats, pro-Israel activists, mainstream media, and even the fascist Trump administration. He's adept at shifting the conversation away from the details of sanctions and toward a sweeping narrative that the federal government is allegedly criminalizing anti-Israel activism, anti-capitalist politics, and opposition to U.S. foreign policy. Piker described his trip in various ways, at one point claiming he was acting as a journalist by creating a mini-documentary about life in Cuba. At other times, he's characterized it as a humanitarian effort, focused on providing humanitarian aid. This framing, using language common in socialist and communist online circles, like the phrase Epstein class to critique perceived elite corruption, echoes propaganda from U.S. adversaries. He even suggested he's going to be made an example of as America gallops toward fascism. He also dismissed speculation that Elon Musk might have influenced the subpoena due to a recent interview with Musk's child's mother, Ashley St. Clair, who is involved in a custody dispute with Musk. Medea Benjamin of Code Pink echoed Piker's sentiment, posting on X, "Taking medical supplies to pediatric hospitals in Cuba is now a crime? Saving the lives of babies is a crime? The administration is beyond grotesque." She, too, framed the trips as humanitarian missions, even though organizers and participants have consistently paired these aid campaigns with overt political rhetoric condemning U.S. sanctions and what they call imperialism and settler colonialism. Even Piker's uncle, far-left commentator Cenk Uygur, defended him, tweeting that the government sent a bullshit subpoena and is tightening the noose on speech. He argued that the government uses technicalities and excuses rather than admitting they dislike what someone is saying, linking the investigation to broader left-wing claims about the suppression of pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel speech. Piker himself is no stranger to controversy, having previously drawn criticism for telling viewers to kill Republicans. He's also been a vocal critic of U.S. foreign policy, often targeting Israel and what he deems the rogue United States. During his live stream, he even scoffed at lawmakers discussing rising anti-Semitism in the U.S., a sentiment that has drawn criticism from those same lawmakers. So, what does this all mean? On one hand, you have a federal agency investigating potential violations of U.S. sanctions law, a perfectly legitimate function of government. On the other hand, you have a high-profile influencer and his network framing this as a politically motivated attack on dissent. This dynamic raises profound questions about the intersection of activism, social media influence, and government oversight. It highlights how regulatory actions, even if legally sound, can be powerfully reinterpreted and amplified in the digital age to fuel broader political narratives. The outcome of this investigation could set a precedent for how such trips and the accompanying rhetoric are handled in the future, potentially impacting free speech debates and the boundaries of political activism in the U.S. What do you think about this entire situation? Is the government overstepping, or is this a necessary investigation? Drop your opinion in the comments below. I read every single one. The political landscape is constantly shifting, and staying informed is more crucial than ever. We'll be watching this story closely.